Did you know that in 2025, over 38 million Americans, including millions of children, are still living in poverty? That's more than the entire population of Canada. And while the US is one of the wealthiest countries in the world, some states are stuck in a cycle of poverty that's been building for generations. From crumbling schools to families choosing between rent and food, poverty isn't just a number, it's a daily reality. What's even more shocking, some of the states with the worst poverty rates aren't the ones you might expect. In fact, a few are major contributors to the national economy, yet large parts of their populations are living below the poverty line. What's really going on here? Are policies failing? Is it history catching up, or something deeper? In this video, we're counting down the top 10 poorest states in America based on the most recent data from 2025. And trust us, you'll want to stick around for number 1. Number 10, Oklahoma. At first glance, Oklahoma might not seem like a state struggling with poverty. Known for its oil fields, wide-open plains, and deep-rooted American culture, it paints the picture of hard work and tradition. But behind that image lies a growing crisis. Over 15% of Oklahomans live below the poverty line in 2025. That's more than 600,000 people fighting daily battles just to get by. While major cities like Tulsa and Oklahoma City are expanding, rural communities are being left behind, with little access to stable job, quality education, or healthcare. The state's economic troubles are deeply tied to its reliance on energy and agriculture, industries that are volatile and heavily affected by global market swings and climate conditions. When oil prices drop, thousands of jobs disappear overnight. When farms fail due to drought, families lose not just income, but their entire way of life. On top of that, Oklahoma ranks among the lowest in the nation for public education funding, making it even harder for the next generation to escape poverty's grip. Many schools in poorer areas are under-resourced, with outdated materials and overcrowded classrooms, while healthcare deserts leave residents with little access to doctors or specialists. But perhaps the most heartbreaking aspect is how poverty is normalized in some parts of the state. In rural counties, multi-generational poverty is seen as just the way things are. For many families, government assistance isn't a temporary safety net, it's a long-term necessity. These aren't just numbers on a report, these are real people, families, children, and seniors, struggling in silence. And unless structural changes are made, Oklahoma's poverty cycle will continue, quietly shaping the lives of hundreds of thousands. So while it may only rank number 10 on this list, its story sets the tone for what's to come. Number 9, Alabama. Alabama is a state of rich history, southern charm, and undeniable resilience, but also deep-rooted inequality. In 2025, more than 15.8% of its population lives in poverty, affecting close to 800,000 people. While cities like Birmingham and Huntsville are growing tech hubs, the prosperity isn't spreading equally. Rural towns, particularly in the Black Belt region, continue to suffer from lack of infrastructure, poor public services, and limited economic opportunity. It's a tale of two Alabamas, one booming, the other forgotten. What keeps Alabama stuck in this cycle? For starters, the state consistently ranks near the bottom in national education quality and healthcare access. Many rural counties have no hospitals within reasonable driving distance, and public schools are often underfunded and overcrowded, leaving students with fewer opportunities to succeed. On top of that, Alabama has one of the lowest minimum wages when adjusted for cost of living, making it difficult for working families to rise above the poverty line even when they hold multiple jobs. The generational nature of poverty here is especially troubling. In many communities, families have lived below the poverty line for decades, with little change from one generation to the next. There's a lack of upward mobility, and many young people leave the state entirely in search of better opportunities. Yet, despite these challenges, the resilience of Alabama's communities shines through. Grassroots organizations, churches, and local leaders are working tirelessly to bring hope and change, but the road is long. As we move further down the list, Alabama serves as a painful reminder that poverty isn't always loud or visible. It can be quiet, generational, and deeply embedded in in the system itself. Number 8. Kentucky. Nestled in the heart of Appalachia, Kentucky carries a legacy of coal, bluegrass, and small-town pride. But behind its scenic hills and warm hospitality lies a harsh economic reality. In 2025, around 16.2% of Kentuckians live in poverty, translating to over 700,000 people struggling to make ends meet. The decline of the coal industry, a once thriving backbone of the state's economy, has left many regions, especially in the eastern part of the state, in a state of economic freefall. With jobs disappearing and few alternatives available, entire communities have been left behind. In counties like Harlan and Pike, the poverty is not just financial, it's systemic. Schools are underfunded, hospitals are closing, and basic services like transportation and internet access are unreliable or completely absent. This makes it incredibly difficult for residents to pursue higher education, find better-paying jobs, or access healthcare. Many households live paycheck to paycheck, while others rely entirely on federal aid and food assistance programs just to survive. The problem is especially severe among children and the elderly, two groups that are most vulnerable to the effects of long-term poverty. What makes Kentucky's case even more tragic is the sense of isolation felt in its most affected area. Entire towns feel forgotten by the rest of the country, cut off both economically and socially. Despite the presence of rich cultural heritage and close-knit communities, the lack of opportunity is driving many young people out of the state in search of something better. And for those who stay, the future often feels uncertain. Kentucky's story is one of survival, but also of warning. When a state becomes too reliant on a single industry and fails to invest in the future, the consequences don't just affect jobs, they reshape lives for generations. Number 7. South Carolina. South Carolina is often seen as a rising star in the southeast, booming tourism, historic charm, and a growing economy. But behind the palm trees and coastal cities lies a very different story. In 2025, approximately 16.5% of the state's population lives in poverty, impacting over 850,000 people. While Charleston and Greenville shine with development and investment, rural areas and underserved communities are facing a very different reality: crumbling infrastructure, underperforming schools, and limited job prospects. The contrast between wealth and poverty in this state is striking. One of the biggest drivers of this inequality is geography. In many rural counties, especially in the inland and southern parts of the state, basic necessities like quality healthcare and public transportation are difficult to access. Many residents live miles away from the nearest clinic or grocery store. On top of that, racial and economic disparities continue to affect access to education and employment, especially in historically marginalized Black communities. Even in areas close to economic hubs, wages often lag behind rising costs of living, leaving working families stuck in a paycheck-to-paycheck cycle. What's especially heartbreaking is how invisible much of this poverty can be. Tourists may pass through for the beaches and historical sites, never realizing that just a few miles away, families are living without running water or proper housing. Children in some school districts are learning from decades-old textbooks, while their parents juggle multiple low-wage jobs. Still, there is hope. Local nonprofits and educators are pushing back, advocating for policy changes and better support systems. But South Carolina's story is a reminder that economic growth doesn't always mean economic equality, and unless something shifts, large parts of the population will continue to be left behind in the shadows of progress. Number 6. Louisiana. Louisiana is a state rich in culture, music, and resilience, but it also ranks among the most impoverished in the nation. In 2025, about 17.1% of Louisianans live in poverty, affecting more than 780,000 people. For many, the struggle is more than financial. It's a daily fight against inadequate housing, food insecurity, and lack of access to even the most basic health care. Despite being home to one of the world's most iconic cities, New Orleans, the poverty in Louisiana extends far beyond city limits, deep into rural parishes, storm-battered communities, and under-resourced neighborhoods that never fully recovered from natural disaster. Louisiana's poverty crisis is shaped by a complex mix of systemic inequality, environmental vulnerability, and political neglect. Frequent hurricanes and floods repeatedly devastate low-income communities, many of which are still rebuilding from storms that hit years ago. Add to that an underfunded public education system, a healthcare network ranked near the bottom nationally, and a shrinking middle class, and you get a situation where poverty becomes not just common but generational. In some communities, children are growing up with the same economic barriers their parents and grandparents faced, with no clear way out. But what makes Louisiana's story especially painful is how normalized this poverty has become. In neighborhoods just minutes from tourist hotspots, children go to school hungry, families live without reliable electricity, and hospitals are overwhelmed or out of reach. And yet, the people remain hopeful. From grassroots leaders to local charities, there are countless individuals fighting to create change. Still, Louisiana's poverty problem isn't just about bad luck or bad weather. It's about systems that have failed for far too long. Unless bold action is taken, the cycle will continue, and millions will be left behind in a state that's given so much to the culture and soul of America. Number 5. Arkansas. Arkansas is known for its natural beauty, rolling mountains, and deep southern roots. But in 2025, it also holds the unfortunate distinction of having one of the highest poverty rates in the country, around 17.4%, which means nearly 500,000 people are struggling to afford basic necessities. Despite a strong work ethic and a culture of perseverance, many residents are stuck in a harsh economic reality where hard work simply isn't enough to escape poverty. One of the key issues in Arkansas is the prevalence of low-wage jobs and limited upward mobility. Many of the available jobs are in agriculture, retail, and manufacturing, industries that often offer low pay, few benefits, and little job security. Meanwhile, access to education and healthcare remains a serious challenge, especially in the state's widespread rural areas. In some communities, students attend severely underfunded schools, and residents have to drive hours just to see a doctor. These barriers create a cycle where poverty is passed down through generations, not by choice, but by circumstance. What makes the situation even more tragic is the invisibility of Arkansas's poverty. Unlike major cities where homelessness and poverty are more visible, in Arkansas, it often hides behind mobile homes, rundown rural neighborhoods, and isolated farm towns. Families live on the edge, working multiple jobs just to keep food on the table, often without access to broadband internet, quality childcare, or basic transportation. Yet, despite these struggles, many communities are resilient and tight-knit, relying on each other for support. But without serious investment in infrastructure, education, and healthcare, Arkansas risks remaining stuck in a loop where effort doesn't always lead to progress, and poverty continues to shadow even the hardest-working families in the state. We put a lot of heart and research into bringing these stories to light, so if this video opened your eyes, drop a comment sharing which state shocked you the most or what you'd like to see changed. And hey, it's just one click to subscribe, but it means the world to us. Number 4. West Virginia. West Virginia, once a proud symbol of American industry and coal-powered progress, now finds itself in a deep economic struggle. In 2025, about 17.8% of West Virginians live below the poverty line, which means nearly 1 in every 5 people in the state is battling daily hardship. The fall of coal, the industry that once built entire communities, has left behind not just abandoned mines, but abandoned futures. Towns that once thrived are now riddled with joblessness, addiction, and a lack of opportunity. The challenges facing West Virginia go beyond economics. They're woven into the very fabric of daily life. As factories and mines shut down, schools and hospitals followed. Many rural communities have limited access to clean water, functioning roads, or basic internet service. The opioid crisis has hit the state harder than almost anywhere else in the country, compounding the economic pain with a devastating health emergency. For many families, the choice isn't between college or a career. It's between staying and struggling or leaving everything behind to find a future elsewhere. And yet, the people of West Virginia remain some of the most determined and close-knit in the country. In towns where main streets are mostly shuttered, neighbors still check in on each other, and community centers often serve as lifelines. But kindness alone can't fix crumbling infrastructure or create sustainable jobs. Without bold investment and national attention, West Virginia's poverty will remain a quiet crisis, hidden in the hills but heartbreaking in its scale. As we inch closer to the poorest state on this list, West Virginia's story reminds us how quickly prosperity can fade when entire communities are left behind. Number 3. New Mexico. With its breathtaking deserts, rich Native American and Hispanic heritage, and vibrant art scene, New Mexico is one of the most culturally unique states in the country. But behind the beauty lies a harsh truth. In 2025, about 18.2% of New Mexicans live in poverty, making it one of the poorest states in America. That's nearly 1 in 5 people struggling to survive in a land often romanticized for its landscapes and culture. And for many families, especially in indigenous and rural communities, the poverty is not just economic, it's generational and systemic. New Mexico's poverty crisis is fueled by historic marginalization, lack of infrastructure, and uneven access to education and healthcare. Many Native American reservations still lack lack access to clean water, electricity, and medical facilities. In public schools, especially in low-income areas, students face overcrowded classrooms, outdated materials, and high dropout rates. Job opportunities outside urban centers like Albuquerque and Santa Fe are limited, and even there, wages often fail to keep up with rising costs of living. The result is a state where culture thrives, but opportunities are scarce for too many of its people. What makes this especially painful is the sense of forgotten potential. New Mexico has some of the most brilliant young minds, artists, and storytellers, but poverty forces many to abandon their dreams or move elsewhere to survive. The state's stunning scenery hides these struggles from the outside world, making the poverty here quieter, but no less devastating. And while community programs and activists are working tirelessly to uplift their people, lasting change requires investment, visibility, and equity. New Mexico's story is a powerful reminder that beauty can't feed families, and culture alone can't pay the bills. Behind the postcard-perfect views lies a population still waiting for its fair shot. Number 2, Mississippi. For decades, Mississippi has carried the heavy burden of being one of the poorest states in the nation, and in 2025, that hasn't changed. With a staggering poverty rate of around 18.8%, nearly 1 in every 5 Mississippians lives below the poverty line. In some counties, especially those in the Mississippi Delta, the numbers are even worse. Generations of economic hardship, racial inequality, and underinvestment have created a state where poverty isn't just common, it's woven into everyday life. Despite its deep cultural roots, rich history, and contributions to music, literature, and civil rights, Mississippi continues to face some of the worst education and health outcomes in the country. Public schools, particularly in rural and predominantly black areas, are severely underfunded, with outdated facilities and limited resources. Access to healthcare is alarmingly low, and the state has some of the highest rates of infant mortality, obesity, and preventable disease. Many families live without consistent access to clean water or basic sanitation, issues that persist year after year with little national attention. What's perhaps most heartbreaking is how normalized poverty has become for so many here. Children grow up expecting to struggle, and communities have learned to survive with less because they've had to for generations. But despite the odds, Mississippi is full of resilience, strength, and hope. Nonprofits, educators, and faith-based groups continue to push for change, but they're fighting against a system that has failed to provide equal footing for far too long. As we reach the end of this list, Mississippi's story is a sobering reminder that poverty isn't always loud, but it is always urgent, and no state should be left behind in a country with so much to give. Number 1, Puerto Rico. Topping the list in 2025 isn't a state, but a U.S. territory that's often overlooked in national conversations, Puerto Rico. While it may not be one of the 50 states, its struggles are undeniably American. With a staggering poverty rate of over 40%, nearly half of the island's population lives below the poverty line. That's more than 1.2 million people, in a place that's technically part of the wealthiest country on earth. It's a reality that is both shocking and heartbreaking. Puerto Rico's poverty isn't just about low income, it's about deep-rooted colonial policies, economic instability, and repeated natural disasters. After hurricanes like Maria and Fiona devastated the island, the rebuilding process has been painfully slow and mismanaged. Schools have closed, hospitals are under-equipped, power outages are routine, and because Puerto Rico lacks full statehood, it doesn't receive the same level of federal support as the mainland, despite its people being U.S. citizens. Many families survive on limited government aid and remittances from relatives who've moved to the U.S. mainland in search of a better life. What makes Puerto Rico's situation so tragic is the feeling of abandonment. There is pride, culture, and community on the island, but also exhaustion. Young people are leaving in droves, and those who remain face skyrocketing costs and dwindling opportunity. It is a land of beauty and spirit, but also of broken promises. Puerto Rico's place at the top of this list isn't just a statistic, it's a call to action. A reminder that poverty doesn't always wear the face we expect, and that in the shadow of the American dream, entire communities are still waiting to be seen, heard, and helped. As we reach the end of this countdown, one thing becomes painfully clear. Poverty in America isn't just a statistic, it's a story. It's a child going to bed hungry in Mississippi, a mother walking miles to the nearest clinic in New Mexico, a coal miner in West Virginia with no job and no health care. And it's the people of Puerto Rico rebuilding their lives, again, after being hit by another storm, both literal and political. What's striking is that many of these places aren't failing because people aren't working hard, they're failing because systems are. The poorest states and territories in America are often rich in culture, pride, and community, but they're burdened by decades of neglect, underinvestment, and policy decisions that prioritize short-term gain over long-term growth. These communities aren't asking for pity, they're asking for fairness, for opportunity, for the same shot at success that others get by default. Throughout this video, we've seen how poverty can be both visible and invisible. In some areas, it's right in your face: shuttered businesses, crumbling schools, and food deserts. In others, it hides behind highways and tourist attractions, out of sight but never out of impact. And perhaps the most dangerous thing about it is how normalized it has become in so many parts of the country. When poverty becomes expected, it becomes accepted, and that's something we cannot allow. But there is hope. Across every one of these states and territories, people are fighting back. Teachers, healthcare workers, community leaders, and everyday citizens who believe their home deserves better. They're proving that change doesn't just come from the top. It starts with awareness, action, and compassion. So now we ask you, what role will you play? Will you simply watch and move on? Or will you speak up, share, and demand better? Because the truth is, poverty in America doesn't need to exist at this scale. We have the resources. We have the ability. What we need now is the will. Let's not allow these stories to fade into the background. Let's keep them in the spotlight until real change happens.